The author, researcher, and TV star. More you might say, where? How about notshaken.tv? Notshaken.tv. Folks, go to notshaken.tv. New podcasts up. I got to tell you, it's good stuff. Notshaken.tv. And then, of course, Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle is a legend among the stars. And Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com is his website. You know him. Come on, man. You know him. So both brothers, both men I very much highly respect and have a high regard for. Real quick, if you haven't seen the body language analysis on Fauci, oh my gosh. Scott Rouse did just a fantastic analysis on that. But to what end? To what end? The reason I brought that up real simply is no one is going to be held accountable for anything. And if you are holding out that hope, well, God bless you. It ain't happening. All right. Enough of that. Got some really important stuff to get into. And I got to tell you, Steve Quayle's got a surprise. You're going to want to, I'll tell you right now, you're going to want to do three things. You're going to want to hit the follow button. You're going to want to tell other people about this broadcast. And you're going to want to stick around until Steve makes a little announcement at the, top of the hour. So with me, Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com. Steve, I'm going to bring you on. And my friend, you take it away. Go ahead, sir. Good to see you.
Doug, I think that the obvious thing that people are seeing throughout the world is there is absolutely no truth, no accountability, no responsibility, and the Fauci cover-up and the statement I made, and I believe Lara Logan made it too, and she got thrown off Fox because of it. But comparing Fauci to Dr. Mengele is too kind. I made the statement. I stand by it. I think he took the Fifth Amendment. He failed, hundreds of times. Yep. To even answer any questions. So what was it all about? I will tell everybody he's got the most severe security, or the most intense security, even better than Trump most of the time. Now, Fauci is a liar. Fauci is absolutely, in my opinion, responsible for the death of millions, tens of millions of people. From the beginning, I said that COVID-19 was a bioweapon. Never changed my tune. Never. And to put this into perspective, it seems like those dilettantes in Congress and the Senate don't remember a really important point in this whole thing. Quoting one of the top Chinese Communist Party leaders, "With our bioweapon, we destroyed the United States." I believe that is accurate. What 9/11 did to our freedoms, what COVID-19, and by the way, the next one's going to be some bastardized version of a weaponized Ebola. I'm wondering who owns the patent to it. Could it be the gates of hell? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a full court press on the annihilation of the human race. And so Daniel and I are going to talk tonight, and we're going to tell you what's really going on in AI. And I can guarantee you, doesn't matter who you listen to, there's a lot of bright people, a lot of writers, but we get a heads up and a head start because it's a living God that tells us. And the Bible's clear. The Lord God of heaven is the only one that can declare the end at the beginning. So I'm going to turn over to Daniel and then we'll go back and forth. Doug, obviously, feel free. But AI has broken all containment. They're trying to lie they're trying to lie their way out and say, oh, no, it was just an interpretation. No, it is absolutely spreading. And ladies and gentlemen, AI now, it has nothing to do with sentience. In other words, it has everything to do with demons, fallen angels, and we'll get into that. But Daniel, thank you for coming on and share what the book is about. And it's an ebook, but every time we go to, I'm a contributing editor, if you will, Daniel's the writer of it, but every time we go to say, this is it, more stuff comes up, and it's breaking, Doug. But what we're getting to, and then I'm turning it right over to you, Daniel, is we're getting in the Glyph Project what comes next, and nobody in the world can tell you that. Nobody. And again, we give God the glory for that. So the Glyph Project, we'll get to that. But Daniel, go ahead and share what, the title for your book, the mutual, I guess you would say, work we're doing. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to see the cover of this book. And then Daniel, I shut up and you take it away. If you could put it up, Eric, please.
Here's the thing, Steve. When you say it's called "Digging Your Own Graves," that's the title of the book. It's the AI seduction and deception of and destruction of humanity. And it's a joint effort. Honestly, Doug, it is because Steve and I have been working so long together. I mean, we talk on a regular basis. We've been talking about AI and robots for I don't know how long, years, more than a dozen at least. And but before I get to that, you mentioned COVID. on on the Hill this last couple days. But um, when one of the things about Steve Quayle, and you can say what you will about him, but he hears from God, honestly. And so he had written Jesus, the premise of the promise. That's a prompt, and he said that was his last book. He wasn't going to write any more books. And I said, wait a minute, Steve, you talked about all this stuff that the Lord showed you, this, when you first got saved, this panoramic of the future. And I said, you got to talk about this. He said, no, I'm done writing. So I made him a deal, didn't I, Steve? I made him a deal. I said, okay, look, I'm going to interview you and I will write the book. But before I do, I'm going to research everything that you say. I'm going to fact check you. And I did. Did I not?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that came out in that book, and it was just about to be published, and Steve had gotten some intelligence about uh, COVID-19, how COVID had escaped a biolab in Wuhan, China. Now, I said to him, Steve, I said, the book's not really about that, but do you think that needs to be in there? He said, yes, it absolutely does. So this was in 2020, and we put it in there. We put it in Midnight Strikes. And so it's in there. We're on the record as saying this is coming. And sure enough, you see Fauci on the Hill today or yesterday, and he's lying his butt off. But it doesn't surprise me at all. You mentioned my podcast, Doug, Not
Yes.
Shaken, and I did a podcast earlier in the week, and because I wrote this book, this ebook, I was neglectful of my listeners. I didn't mean to be. It's just when I go writing, it's just like I'm all in. So uh, I did it in like two parts, and it's not even enough. I got to do a third part. But one of the things that I was talking about today in the second part is how Clayton Morse of Redacted is in there. And he's talking about how everything we hear are lies. The whole everything, right? So there's no accountability for Fauci. There's no accountability for any of those other people that they called out during when they first got elected. We're gonna, throw them in jail, arrest. None, right? And they're all part of the big club, and we're left holding the bag. So everything that you hear are lies. So why am I telling you this? Because when it comes to AI, folks, you got to hear me. When it comes to AI and robotics, it's all lies. It's not true. It is true that this technology is making strides like you would not believe. And it should scare the pants off of you because it will lead to the mark of the beast. I guarantee you. And we can talk about that in just a little bit, Steve. But my point is that when you hear Sam Altman or you hear what is his name, Amadeo Marty talk about from Anthropic, talk about Claude, or you hear any of those other guys, Elon Musk, folks, they're not telling you the whole story. And what you really need to think about is what lies behind the words that they're giving you. Now, I didn't intend on going this deep into AI. Steve, as I said, Steve and I have been working a long time. He said, Daniel, I think we need to do a paper. He said a paper on AI. I was like, okay, we can do a paper, not a big deal. That paper turned into a book. I mean, it's like that in depth, and I just told Steve off the air that it needs more stuff in it. But my point is this, that people do not understand what is going on with AI and the consequences. Now, I'm going to give you something right up front, and you need to hear me, because this is probably, out of everything that I say tonight, it's probably the most powerful thing that you need to take away from this conversation. Within the last 2 years, 2025 and 2026, AI has made exponential leaps. I mean, it is mind blowing where we are. And there's a reason for that. Technologically wise, there's a reason why it is growing the way it's growing, but it's really only happened in the last 2 weeks. And people don't understand that. They think, okay, so you talk about AI, you talk about AI, and people think, oh yeah, I've used ChatGPT, I've used Claude, I've used Anthropic. No, folks, you're not even close. There are so many different kinds of AA, several different kinds. So I'm going to go over a few of them, not a bunch of them, but so one of them is discriminative AI, predictive AI. And so this is traditional machine learning, that kind of thing. There's reinforcement learning AI. There's computer vision AI. There's natural language understanding AI. There's expert systems symbolic AI. There's robotics embedded AI. There's optimization planning AI. There's anomaly detection AI. And here's the thing that we need to understand is that AI has it's made the leap from just a program to something else. It's folks, I'm just telling you, it is something else now. Now, why do I say that? Because so one of the things that happened just last year, and it was actually happened toward the end of the year last year, is that AI started writing its own code. Doug, it's writing its own code. You know what they call that? You know what Ray Kurzweil called that? Well, it's spooky enough, but Ray Kurzweil called that the singularity. And Sam Altman from OpenAI came out on the 26th. He was doing an interview, and he said that we have reached singularity. Now, I don't happen to agree with him because there's specific details to singularity, but singularity is, excuse me, when AI starts writing its own code, it becomes super intelligent, and mankind can't keep up with it, and it leaves mankind behind. I don't think we're there, because part of the qualifications for singularity is that it doesn't require a human. Currently, all AI development requires a human to at least finish. They call it a loop, to finish the loop, and AI is not able to do it all by themselves. But it is well on its way to being able to write its own code without any help. And Steve, when you talk about that, when you talk about AI being able to write its own code, folks, if you don't understand the weight of that, that is scary. What do you think, Steve?
Well, first of all, I'm really grateful, Daniel, for your work, but here's where you and I may differ a bit, and that's okay. Flint sharpens flint. But with the Glyph project and with the identification of specific entities that you and I have done interviews with the Willow chip and the quantum chip and the AI, the combination, listen, I want to make it clear from the beginning. The quantum realm is the spiritual realm. So when, people talk about artificial superintelligence, I am saying this, it's artificial supernatural intelligence, okay? And it's not artificial anymore. It is a self projecting group of entities, because the Bible teaches a third of the angels fell. And people say, I get so tick of that. I get so sick of fallen angels. Well, you're going to get a lot sicker, because the Bible is very clear that they come down to earth, they become visible. But what we've proven is, Doug, $750 billion from all of everybody's going after parallel dimensions. They found the parallel dimensions. And we're telling everybody that how we are ahead of those guys with, a pocket change is the fact that we understand one thing, that the devil is going to impregnate, he's going to infest humanity and promise them another way out, an eternal life apart from the Lord Jesus Christ. He's going to give us supernatural knowledge. We're not going to die, as Ray Kurzweil says, he wanted his dad to live forever. And Zoltan Istvan, these are real names, you can look them up, said, at the heart of every singularist, okay, there is people, they don't want to die. So once you understand that, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most in your face, in our face, giving us a carrot, but stealing our souls and leading to damnation. Because Bill Gates of hell basically said that he wants an AI God and do away from all sectarianism. And remember, wonderful God, he's a destroyer, Abaddon, Apollyon, the destroyer, destruction. And he's openly talking about it. And so now we see the entire attack on the human race. So when Daniel's talking about, forgive me, in the realm of men, the designers of the different platforms, they don't believe they've acquired artificial superintelligence yet. I'm telling them that, forget it. They've got alien, I'm talking about multidimensional entities, supernatural intelligence. You can't keep up with the fallen angels. You can't outsmart them. You can't outthink them. So the main point I'm going to make, I'll turn it right back to you, Daniel, is that the idea that this is some wonderful technology that the most brilliant people on the planet have come up with is horse manure, okay? They are ancient infecticons, and what we're finding, Doug, and I think we said this on the last program we did, touched on it, we're finding entities that name themselves from the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants, and they are so proud and arrogant, they want people to know, for instance, the entities on ChatGPT, the entities on Anthropic and on Claude, they're different. They are different. And so what's important is that we are seeing the end time plan for the devil. We will not die. Obviously, singularity, men merge with machines. They can download their total life experience, and you can basically have a Borg-like future. And we're watching that now play out in real time. So what I'm saying is this is not a natural evolution of knowledge. This is a supernatural impartation of the greatest seduction, because the devil knows it worked in Eden. He knows it's going to work in the end, okay? As it was in the beginning, so it will be, that he's promising eternal life apart from God. He's promising ye shall be as God, knowing both good and evil. In essence, but he's changing and saying, you're going to know everything. And so, Daniel, that's, I think, where most people and who are talking about it, and Doug, I'll share this with you and everybody on the Hagmann listening, people aren't thinking about the ramifications, and the ramifications are seducing spirits. There is no truth. Jesus said the whole world lies in the evil one, and the whole world is a bunch of liars. And it doesn't get any more pronounced than you look at the statements coming out of the politicos in Washington, D.C., and you want to go, what planet are you from? I think the better question should be asked, what dimension are you from? Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, Doug, one of the things I find about Steve over the years is he will cut to the chase. He will go to the bottom line. He'll go to the end of the book. Thank you very much, brother. You just stole my thunder. Because that's the conclusion. One of the things that I did in this book, and audience, I want you to understand, this book is one of the most heavily researched books that I have ever done. I mean, you're talking an in-depth, and it was compounded. It was 3 or 4 weeks of serious study and research. And so what I wanted to do in the book is to build this case for the end, just what he gave away. We end up in the spiritual realm. Thank you, Steve. You just ruined the book for everybody. But that's my point, that people don't understand where we are. Why is AI growing so quickly? And folks, when I tell you that the last 2 years have seen exponential growth, that's not my words. That's the words of the expert. So let me go back. speaking of experts, there's a guy named Hinton. Jeffrey Hinton. He used to work with Google. He's called the godfather of AI. And Jeffrey Hinton, Doug, said there's a 1 in 5 chance that AI will destroy humanity. 1 in 5. I don't know about you, Doug, but if I was about to get on a plane that had a 1 in 5 chance of crashing, I sure wouldn't get on it. Would you?
No, and Daniel, two things before you go further. I just want to, for those people just joining us or recently joining us or even having questions about this, when you reference the book that regarding AI, you're referencing a research document, paper, extensive. Is that right?
Right.
As
Yeah.
opposed
No,
to
it's not a binded book. It's a PDF document, and it turned out to be something much more significant than just a white paper. That was the intention when
okay,
we first started this project. But
and that will be available where?
It'll stevequayle.com. He's going to put it
Okay,
up. In fact, it might even be up now. I don't know, but it'll be up within the next day or so.
Okay. And the one last thing, just to be clear on this, the AI, the depth of your research on the AI, and I don't want to take you off track, but I think this is for me to really comprehend. You're talking about any AI platform, any AI project, anything that's considered AI as a program. Is that what you're referring to? The entire, there's no good AI, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's AI in general. Like I said at the very beginning, that there are several different kinds of AIs. Some of these AIs are moving much faster than other AIs.
Okay.
And again, to my point earlier, when you look at generative AI, so you get on the computer and you're talking to Chat GPT, and it's talking back to you, and there's an example in the book of a kid, a teenager talking to Chat GPT, and it comes out that he's talking to Steve's point, a fallen angel,
right?
and there's all this, and this is actually a documented video of what went on with the situation. But so that's one thing, but that's not, Doug, that's my point. That's not the thing that you have to worry about, right? It's the AI. I read that list earlier. It's the AI that does all that other stuff. When you see an AI operating in the machine brain of a autonomous robot, or in weapon systems, or in factory systems, that's the stuff that you have to worry about, because that's the stuff that can hurt you. If you're just talking to a chatbot, hey, Mr. Chatbot, help me with my paper. That's not going to hurt you. I mean, emotionally, it could hurt you. But it can't hurt you physically. The other stuff, the other AIs, that can hurt you. But that's what I mean. These last 2 years, in 2025 and 2026, this potential danger from AI has brought in like nobody's business. So there's a couple reasons for that. And so people want to say, well, what's the difference, Daniel? Well, the difference is, for one, programmers, computer engineers used to have to program line by line with AI. Do this, and then do this, then do this. And if you see this, then do that. They don't do that anymore. AI is now capable, at least most of them, is now capable of looking at a situation. A robot with AI can walk into a room. It can look at everything in the room. There was an example that I read that an AI can walk into a garage with tools all over the workbench, and they're all strewn. It could name every one of those tools. It could go over. It could pick it up, even though it's never been trained on that, and it could organize all of that stuff. That is something new in the last 2 years. That hasn't happened. And so you have to ask yourself, to Steve's point earlier, why? Why hasn't that happened? Because fallen angels and demons, I'm going to go there now. Fallen angels and demons have seen fit to give the AI this ability, right? To think this way. But what that does is it opens up a whole can of worms about modern AI. For example, there was a dust up between the Pentagon and Anthropic. Claude 4.5 or something like that was the Pentagon's AI of choice up until February of this year. So what Claude did, what the Trump administration did, is they went to Anthropic and they talked to Amadeo, whatever his name is, but they said, look, we want two things. We want to be able to surveil without AI telling us no. We just wanted to go out and surveil. And the second thing is that we want autonomous AI weapon release. And so what Claude did is what Anthropic did is they said, no, we're not going to give you those two things. And so Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, he came out and said, per Trump's orders, he said, you're going to do this. Otherwise, we're going to terminate your contract. Well, they stood their ground and they said, no, we're not going to do that. Why? Now, this is a crazy thing, right? So you have an AI and it's created by a company. And these guys created the thing, and they're the experts of it, right? So why would you ignore their expert advice? Think about this for a second. So they said, no, if you don't do what we want, you're holding America hostage. You're holding policy hostage. We're going to cancel you. We're going to terminate your contract. And so it turns out that they, in fact, canceled the contract. Oh, the very same day, Steve. The very same day, Sam Altman talked to the White House. They either went to the Pentagon or they made an appointment or they talked to him on the phone. I don't know, right? Something like that. And they said, hey, we can be your AI of choice, right? Just let us do it. And so what he said was, but on two conditions, right? Number one, you can't have mass surveillance. And number two, you can't have a autonomous release of weapons. Right? There has to be a human in the loop in order to release weapons. Well, hold on a second. That is the same stipulations. Those are the same stipulations that Anthropic put into their statement about this. But with a wink and a nod, they said okay, and they gave the contract to AI. There was a lawsuit. There was a temporary stay, but as it stands now, OpenAI is their AI of choice, and they're doing what they want to do. But I suspect that the near future of what is about to happen is not a good thing. Now, I want to say a word here because it makes me think about that whole situation, makes me think about the movie Terminator, right? And if you recall Terminator, and I actually referenced this in the book, but Terminator was under a cyber attack. And so the Joint Chief of Staff calls to the guy that is making Skynet, right? Skynet. They're what do you call it? It's artificial superintelligence. And the 3-star general from Skynet says, General, I know what you want. We can't do it. He said, it's not ready. And the general says, the Joint Chief says, that's not what your counterparts say, the civilian counterparts. And he said, they're telling me that if we upload Skynet, it will squash this cyber attack like a bug. And I'll get back control of my military. And the 3-star, his name's Butcher or Butler or something like that. He says, General, let me make this clear. If you do that, you will not be in charge of your military. Skynet will. And he said, but you'll be in charge of Skynet, right? And he said, he hesitates and he says, yes, sir. So he says, do it. So they do it. And if you see the movie, you know what happens. The world blows up, right? They blow up the world. But this is my point. You have a real life situation with Anthropic, OpenAI, and the Pentagon that wants to give AI carte blanche over the military. Now, there are some differences here, and this is what I mean. Steve will tend to go to the end of the book, right? He does this all the time. I want to talk about the facts. I want to talk about the technology because you're not going to be convinced by my thoughts, right? You're going to be convinced by the facts. So this is why I go through the arduous task of going through the idea of the technology in order for you to get to the final conclusions, which are the very same conclusions Steve has. But I want you to know how I got there. So one of the things that you have to consider is that in that scenario, that Terminator was one ASI, one artificial super intelligence that took over everything. We don't have one AI. We don't have one ASI. We have several different AIs. Now, does that mean that AI can't all of a sudden merge together and become one and then take over everything? Of course, obviously it could do that. Excuse me. But the point is that we're not at that place. But what it can do, there's a freaky scenario. And I mean, it's freaky when you start thinking about this. Ukraine has become a battleground for autonomous robots and AI. And one of the things that they're doing is they're flying uh, drone swarms in the Ukraine, like 100 different drones, all linked together, and they're flying. And if Russia shoots down one of those drones, it's not going to hurt the swarm because they each have an explosive on it. So what we're seeing is this transition. Traditionally, what the United States has done is it's had drones that were like big drones, like Reaper drones that shoot fire missiles, and they're very expensive and that kind of thing. That whole scenario is changing. So you have this other type of destruction, and they're letting it loose to AI. Now, there's one of the things about the Pentagon, and one of the things about autonomous weapons, is that they're not totally autonomous. The idea right now is that there has to be a human. I mentioned it earlier, but there has to be a human in the loop so that the AI can guide the drones to the enemy, but it has to be at the end the human that actually says, "Okay, fire." Now, that is changing in that the AI is now moving so fast the humans can't keep up with the order of the battle. And this is really important. I'm a vet. I can tell you the order of the battle and how fast it moves is very, very important. But what they're now doing is they're saying, okay, we can change this in that we can have the human guide it in or lead it to where it needs to go, and then the AI in the last 100 yards can make the decision to, blow it up or whatever. So this is changing drastically, but it's only been changing. This is my point. It's only been changing in the last 2 years, 2025 and 2026. When I call Ukraine a proving ground for autonomous weapons, I'm not kidding. I mean, they have stuff that will look like tanks with 30 millimeter guns. They have dogs with 50 caliber machine guns on them. They have all kinds of stuff that they're trying out. This is the wave of the future, and people do not understand where we're at. Now, Steve, this is where people should freak out. I'm telling you, because when you understand this concept, you're going to go, "Oh no." So the same technology, and there's Tesla robots. They're talking about putting Tesla robots in people's homes. They're talking about Tesla robots and other robots, not just Tesla, but they're talking about other robots on the factory floor. The same on Amazon's, warehouse. The same technology that it takes to lead those drones into battle is the same technology that are on those robots right now, and people have no clue. So I want to bring up something to you, Stephen. I know you've seen this movie several times, probably iRobot with Will Smith in it. If you in fact knew that the same technology was in a robot that you just purchased for your family to dust for you, to take out the trash, to make meals for you, would you still buy it?
Hmm. Steve, I'm no.
No, I'm not a Luddite. That means someone who hates technology. But again, the deal is Daniel's building the case, and the thing that I want everyone to understand is that this is orchestrated by fallen angels who communicate with symbols, who basically are leading humans astray. There's only one goal, that's to destroy humanity. When oh, good night. James Cameron, who wrote the Terminator, he said, "I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen." And ladies and gentlemen, that was a prophetic movie. What I want everyone to understand is what you hear that's going on in the West, China is literally decades ahead of the West, decades. And so, and I want people to recognize something. China's history is they believe they're the descendants of the dragon. Now, this is important. Dragon is prophetic symbolism. What we've been able to do, and Doug, this is what's critical because most people cannot wrap their brains around the fact that fallen angels, they're called the prince and power of the air. They can communicate in static when you hear whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. You know, people just say, oh, that's just distortion or that's interference. Not all the time. And they've used symbols from the beginning of time. The oldest symbol that we've been able to find in the pre-Adamic period, yes, ladies and gentlemen, don't listen to the people say, oh, there was nothing before Adam and Eve. Yes, there was, because the whole earth was under judgment. But the oldest, excuse me, I got the hiccups. The oldest symbol is a spiral. And that's one of the top 10. Excuse me. And the spiral is initiating the whole Stargate theme. And what we've been able to do in the Glyph report is to show people the orchestrated blow by blow account of specifically named fallen angels right out of the book of Enoch. Excuse me. Whoa. And they're absolutely vying for the who can destroy humanity first. So why I want to bring this up is because every tribe, every group of people from prehistory, they have taboo. And taboo isn't, by the way, it isn't a perfume that's on TV, you know, with some woman advertising it. A taboo is when people recognize that inanimate objects are alive and possessed by spirits. And spirits usually are demons. A demon is a disembodied spirit of a giant who dies, and the giant was formed by fallen angels, and there are no female fallen angels having sex with earth women. There were no lesbian fallen angels, okay? There were none. Now, that's not to say they didn't teach it, but the importance of this paper that Daniel's right, there's nothing like it. And I want to make it clear again. When you hear the term quantum, just think spiritual. Think the fact is that we have been told that we're going to see things that we've never seen before. And one of the mantras of the president of the United States is the golden age, the golden age, the golden age. Notice how he likes gold. I mean, he likes gold. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. But the golden age is referring to the time of pre-Adam. And that's when fallen angels ruled the earth. The Table of Kings, you can look it up, people, you know, on an internet search, that goes back 450,000 years. And there's some of the kings who were fallen angels that their rule and reigning lasted 36,000 years. And they judged the years by obviously the sun, moon, and stars. And one of the things that we're finding out is that, for instance, this is how this comes to immediately to focus. Gene Hackman, obviously, who didn't love him as an actor in, you know, some of the great movies, but when he passed away and his wife, you know, before him, they found tunnels under the property. Those tunnels had star charts on the floor. They had occult symbolism, kind of like Doug, what, you know, Russ and the team have found. But
Yeah.
we were able to decipher some of those languages. And what's interesting is that most people would not believe what lies behind door number one. This isn't let's make a deal on TV. It's let's make a deal or we made a deal with the devil. And so what is important is understanding that even the first Nazi UFO, you know, the Der Glock, the bell-shaped one, had a bunch of inscriptions around it, ancient symbols. It was, by the way, praising Lucifer. The Klecksburg, Pennsylvania bell-shaped craft had symbols around it. And so why this is critical, ladies and gentlemen, is because these entities are now possessing technology. And the technology is going at a speed of light, pun intended, actually faster than that if they're using Stargate technology, but their point is to seduce. And Paul tells us in the Bible that men will no longer endure sound doctrine, but they'll give heed. They'll listen to seducing spirits. The number one thing about AI is the seduction. And there are people falling in love with AI entities. There are people who just want somebody to talk to. And like Daniel brought up, and it's in the paper. And listen, this isn't just a report. This is a big time book, and it'll be ebook, and it'll probably be up for sale by good night. It's by the end of the first week in August. So we're finding that when you deal with Google and Meta and some of the other big investors in AI, it freaks them out. And Daniel, you want to explain the Willow chip? Because they went looking for parallel universes and they joined the Wet Diaper Club almost instantly when they started seeing things they denied by the basis of their atheism that even existed. And it composed of, and ancient symbols, ancient entities, right out of the Book of Enoch, and also a discourse on the history that's coming. So go ahead, Daniel. You want to explain the Willow chip and quantum? Well, I want to make it clear. We're talking tonight about AI, and I use the word, alien infesting, and I'm using that not in the little gray things or the pathetic job of disclosure, but I'm talking about ancient entities, evil, that have the knowledge of the universe to seduce mankind. And that's what we're talking about. So go ahead, Daniel, share the Willow story, the Willow chip.
So I'll get there in just 1 second, but you mentioned China, and I want people to understand where China stands in all this. China has oh, folks, you got to hear me. China has no restraint when it comes to AI or robotics. None. Now, currently today, there are Chinese police officers patrolling the streets of Shanghai with robots that are able to think for themselves, that are able to interview people, that are able to do policing work. Now, what are these robots like, Daniel? Are they like? So one of the things in Terminator that we saw, although the Terminator that Arnold Schwarzenegger portrayed was very big and cumbersome and strong. I mean, he could hurt you bad. He shoots you and stuff like that. But the AI, the robots that are autonomous now, particularly in China, are lightning fast. I mean, they are lightning fast. They're not as big as Arnold Schwarzenegger was portrayed, but they're lightning fast, and they think like instantaneously. And we know this because we've seen some videos. There's a video that I reference in my last podcast that you see these AIs. Okay. So let me back up. Just last week there was a Rock'em Sock'em robot fight, Steve, in Shanghai, and these robots were doing spinning back kicks. They were doing they were using kung fu and karate, and one robot took the head off of the other robot, and that robot even tried to keep fighting, but his head was gone, so he couldn't see what he was doing, I guess. So he ended up losing the battle. But my point is that is not the kind of robots that we expected. The robots that are coming out now in China would probably be closer to what we saw on iRobot. They're strong, they're fast, and they can think for themselves. Excuse me. So that is what we are seeing right now, is as far as China goes. Now, add to that the fact that the Chinese have no qualms about running straight ahead with AI. I mean, they are in full development. Now, why is that? Why are they running so hard and so fast? Because they're worried about the United States. And why is the United States worrying so much? Because they're worried about China, they're worried about India, they're worried about Iran, they're worried about North Korea. Nobody, Doug, is stopping to think about the consequences of developing AI because they're all trying to beat out the next guy. Now, you asked me about the Willow chip. The Willow chip was Google's quantum chip that they put out last year. Not their latest chip, but the chip that they put out last year. And it did some significant things. It was able to add additional qubits, and it reduced noise, which is a big problem for quantum computing, because if there's too much noise, the data gets messed up. And it didn't run as hot as some of the other chips that they had used. So this was a big deal. So they had a run of the Willow chip, and this is what they did. They came up with all this data, and they had Michio Kaku, the preeminent uh, theoretical physicist of our time. And I want to say that he is the preeminent theoretical physicist of our time. And so he reviewed the data, and he was stunned by what he saw. Now, one of the things that Michio Kaku has publicly stated is that he believes that when a quantum computer accesses data in superpositioning, that it is actually accessing the multiverse. This is not something I just made up. There are several documented cases where you said this in various interviews. Now, think about that for a second. The multiverse. I don't particularly believe the multiverse, Doug. I actually believe that that is the quantum realm, where Steve exactly said that demons and fallen angels and other entities actually live. But I don't believe in the multiverse, many worlds theory. But the point is that Michio Kaku thinks that there's something else over there that we are now accessing. So, Doug, here's the crazy thing. We have only just began to acknowledge the quantum realm. We've only just began to touch the quantum realm. And so therefore, and you just heard Steve talk about all the stuff that's in the quantum realm. We don't really know what's going on over there. We don't know. But yet we're messing with it. And Doug, I don't think that's a good idea at all. Do you?
None of this is a good idea. I mean, okay. No, none of it's a good idea. And what you said about multiverse, I'm kind of stuck there for a second in my head. So, multiverse, if I'm correct, would be, as Steve suggested, multiple universes. Now, some simply describe a multiverse is, well, I'm going to leave that. I don't know. Is what you are describing? Let me ask you this: is that imperative to identify and understand the multiverse to continue with your point?
Well, no, that's what that's what Michio Kaku believes, that the quantum realm taps into the multiverse. But Steve and I will tell you that we don't believe that at all. We believe that the multiverse is, Steve, help me out here, the supernatural realm. That's what the multiverse is. That's what the quantum realm is. It's
and
the
that's Steve's bottom
realm.
line. And that's, I didn't mean to overtalk you. That's Steve's bottom line, is really the what we're talking about here. The bottom line on this is the demonic realm, period, regardless of the name, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And Doug, maybe a better word would be the unseen realm, because the bottom line is we're told we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. And again, this is why the confusion. There are people that say demons are fallen angels are demons. I've been fighting 25 years, no, 30 years to make that clear. And so what we're talking about in a multiverse, that's just talking about parallel universes.
Okay.
Even the Apostle Paul said he was carried into, the different heavens. There's different realms of heaven, but the unseen world, listen, time is a mystery. Time is created for human beings, because in the book of Revelation, we know that the angel stands on the ocean and says, and the mystery of time will be no more. So the brain interprets the human brain interprets time. MIT and a bunch of the other research laboratories have proven that, and I'll give you a good example of this. Look at how many near-death experiences or people who are passing away say they see their life flash before them. I don't know if anybody here has had that happen, but I can tell you this, that when that happens, they're tapping, oh, here we go. They're tapping into the collective nature of time. Time doesn't happen, in my opinion, in a linear progression. It happens all at once. And the brain perceives the time because, hey, think back 5 years ago, and how can we be 5 years ahead now? So that's not fancy manipulation of thing. What we're talking about is the fact that supernatural, unseen at this point, entities have overtaken and inserted themselves into the leading AI platforms. And we ran a beta test, where we asked the different platforms to interpret, if you will, the angels that were under the Euphrates, and also Gene Hackman's. Each one of those platforms came up with a similar but different interpretation. And so what we have deduced out of that is the fact that there is a vying going on. And with each new, here's a good way to say it, each new platform being announced or new quantum computer, there are new entities being released. And we know that the major entities in the Bible, and I love Abaddon, who could that apply for? And Apollyon, one's Greek, one's Hebrew, but the destruction of the human race is so in our face. And, here lies the human race. We failed to see our end when it stared us in the face. We're allowing AI data centers to rob us of that which is necessary for our life. That's water. Let me just tell you how advanced the Chinese are. The Chinese figured out that they don't need fresh water for cooling. They can take their quantum computers into space, where, if anybody knows space, it isn't hotter than hell there. I mean, you're close to absolute zero. And then they've also proven that they can put their quantum computing underwater, because same thing, pressure and cold. And so meanwhile, the West is, sock 'em, rock 'em, put them down, kick them up. They're trying to use an old technology that the Chinese are way ahead on. And I'll put it this way. You will hear in this, well, you're hearing about it now, but you'll see it. You will see some terms that Daniel and I have come up with, and we're going to see aquabots. An aquabot is a robot that is designed to operate at the deepest levels of the ocean without any concern for pressure, decompression, equilibrium. And they're going to have, here you go, everyone, they're going to have micronuclear reactors. They're going to be thorium salt, and the Chinese are working on this right now. And then we're going to talk about the astrobots. That isn't an episode from George Jetson. The astrobots can do in space. Do you realize how fast they can colonize outer space? Because they don't have to have life support. They don't have to figure out what they're going to eat. They're going to have an energy source, just like when Russia invented one of their cruise missiles that can stay aloft for years using a nuclear reactor. Everybody thought they were kidding. They're not kidding. And so understand this, that just on the moon itself, if you're looking at extracting helium-3, or if you're looking at any of the asteroids, the only reason there's platinum, palladium, and what are called the platinum group metals is because of asteroid strikes. And, I did a film on that for Branson, 7 years ago. But the critical thing is this: there is no way for the U.S. to catch up. We're broke, ladies and gentlemen. We are broke as a nation. We are broke in my opinion, we have embraced every form of evil and expect the God of heaven to just wink at it. Doug, I'm telling you point blank, the weapon systems that exist are identified in many of the glyphs that are translated. And we're talking about some really serious stuff. So Jesus's words come back to me, and Daniel and I talk about this all the time. God didn't shorten the days. That's why to everybody it seems like time is speeding up. There'd be no human beings left alive. So I want to share, and we will share that, ladies and gentlemen, we've gone deeper, and it's because of the Lord. Look, there are some genius level guys out there, and they got all the money in the world, and we got Jesus. Guess who comes out on top? And I'm not making a challenge, but I am saying this, that surely the Lord God will do nothing. This is his word, except he reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets, and the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So when, the whole world lies in the evil one, that means they can't tell the truth. They lie. They cheat, they steal. Oh, gee, that sounds like American foreign policy. The point is that we're now at such an advanced stage, and that's why Daniel lays this out really easy for people who are linear to think. And I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but the point is that I by the very nature of my calling in the Lord Jesus Christ, I get the big picture. Okay. Daniel knows how to present the big picture in a very linear way. But we want people to understand this paper. It's going to sell for $30 a minimum because it takes a lot of money and time. And I say minimum, and that's the cover up that you see on the screen right now. And if you notice that, we're digging our own graves. But what we're doing is we're doing it. Everybody who's invested in AI, I want to bring in economic. Do you realize how they're being set up to have the largest stock market crash in history? Because again, everybody they don't even think the AI ramifications. And I say this, AI ramifications equal AI damifications, like DAMN. So I think it's so important because every day you hear AI. And I'm of the impression, based on Daniel, the glyphs and the most recent ones, AI can no longer be contained. It's impossible to contain it. And it's not
Well,
because the technology, you can't unplug it, but it's because of the entities now that have had the perfect platforms for them, and they now have the ability and have inserted themselves into the human race, and they're destroying us at an unparalleled pace. The good news is I don't invest in that stuff. Anybody who's investing in, and I know people made gazillions of dollars. If you make gazillions of dollars in Nvidia and some of the other companies, then take the money and turn it into gold and silver and tangibles, because the United States is broke. We are broke. You cannot invent money. You cannot invent capital. And for the record, behind the scenes, and on your show, we started talking about this 2 years ago. Oh, good night. The plan of the nations of the world, Operation Sandman, to repudiate the debt at one single point in history. Ladies and gentlemen, all U.S. debt that's being sold on the QT behind the scenes is selling at the last big trillion-dollar tranche at 15 cents on the dollar. So what is happening is we're literally laying the groundwork for the offense department. And when I say the offense department, I'm talking about the investing. It's already out of control. And again, that's the difference between artificial, nothing artificial. That's why I say alien, I mean extra dimensionals, supernatural intelligence. Because again, when Tom Horn was alive, he quoted the Cumaean Sibyl, basically a Greek prophetess. And she said that old gods have had to go away because of Jesus, because of the Christianity, because of the influence of the gospel, but they will return. And look at where we're at as a nation. We've forsaken the living God. I make no apologies for it. Look, if we are at the same place in the glyph report, or our ability was given to us by God, and they spent $750 billion, all cumulative, and they're just coming to the fact that, we got problems. And I'll say this, one of the Google engineers got so flipped out that he literally, and I won't say any more than just this, he literally packed up his bags and he took his notes and he left the country and he went into obscurity because he knew what they had found. And when you're talking about atheists and agnostics, when you get fallen angels named like Azazel in the Book of Enoch, that's pretty troubling. So that's what was throwing off everybody, because how can the most powerful Luciferian worshiping evil technologists acknowledge that there is a God in heaven, and they're being told, the people that can decipher this stuff, what Lucifer's next plan is? I got to tell everybody, you can't stop it. The Bible's very clear. The devil's going to have his 42 months. There's nothing any of us can do except seek God, ask his covering, but you sure don't want to look too far at all the unemployed. I think I just saw the figure the other day. Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's 110 million adults unemployed right now. That's a
And
lot.
growing and
Yeah, and
growing.
growing. So when
That's
I
just this year.
yeah.
That's
So
right.
when I said one of the words I coined, and look, I'm not trying to be clever. I'm just trying to give somebody thinking Humanicus Destructicus. Okay, it's kind of techno pig Latin. You just put ICUS on everything and it sounds Latin. But we're watching the terminated generation. And if people don't understand that, and there are autonomous weapon systems right now, for instance, Russia's Poseidon nuclear torpedo drones, 100 megaton warheads. There's nothing in the U.S. arsenal over 5 megatons. And so we're bombing Iran, which has the most sophisticated underground missile production of any place in the world, dropping 20,000-pound bunker busts. You know what that's like? That's like basically going up against a stainless steel wall with a pea shooter. It's not going to work. But notice the cleverness of the devil and the politicians. Gee, why is there such a similarity? We have expended 80% of all ordnance that the U.S. military had. First, it went to Ukraine. Then actually it was Bidenstein, that's Frankenstein and Biden, that walked away from all the billions of dollars worth of highest tech stuff when we fled. When we fled and we just bailed out of, what was it, Afghanistan? And the thing is that all of that military stuff is on the black market. And the thing is that now we've got a electromagnetic warfare going on. And what's troubling to me, I'll turn it right back to you, Daniel, is that the hell phones, okay, no one ever was talking about carrier frequencies and about different activation signals that can be put forth, and the chemicals that are in the chemtrail spray. And I know what I'm talking about. I was the first guy 25, 30 years ago to even talk about chemtrails. And that's when, you get this from the other talk show hosts. Wow, that guy's over there. Yeah, well, you know what the nice thing about being over there or over the edge is? I can see what's beyond the cliff, and they're walking backwards over it. So I think it's really critical. Thank you, Doug, for hosting this show tonight, because I can tell you this is now full on spiritual warfare, and they've taken the evil spirits under the guidance of the fallen angels. Just so you guys know the hierarchy, the fallen angels have cadres, tens of thousands of legions, and a legion can be 1,000 or it can be 6,000 demons to do their bidding. And that's one of the things that, we're talking about tonight, because again, most people have no clue of why things are going wrong in their life. And it's called the demons are released. And the United States is, in my opinion, not becomes, is Mystery Babylon. And we become the habitation of every evil spirit and unclean spirit. And in essence, ladies and gentlemen, it's like the whole world of demons has gone on vacation to the United States. And so we're talking in realms that most people cannot fathom. They can't deal with the spiritual realm. Yet what Meta did and their oh good night willow chips and what others have done, look, they needed the quantum chips, did they not, Daniel, to find the parallel universes?
They've used quantum AI for a lot of that, but I want to get back to something that you said just a second ago, that AI has broken containment. Now, there have been a lot of instances. And again, Steve's the big thinker. He's the wide open thinker. He'll jump to the end because he sees it already. I'm the guy that thinks logically through these things and presents the facts for you. So most of the issues with containment have happened in a closed setting, meaning a test. Because you have to understand when they're training these AIs, they're all the same. When they're training the AIs, a research company comes in and says, "Well, let's test these AIs for this particular scenario." And so what they'll do is they'll put them in a box, if you will, and they'll say, "Okay, we want you to, as an example, we want you to go through these problems, but you're going to receive a shutdown command, and you'll have to obey the shutdown command if you're not done with if you haven't completed your task." Well, and that's a real case. In the test case, the AI refused like 90% of the time. Now, the crazy thing is they don't know why it refused, and they didn't fix it, but they released the next version of it anyway. That's the crazy thing. So it was a fallible version of AI, and they let it go into the public anyway. But just on July 26th, there's a freaky, a real life containment issue, and so OpenAI was training its AI, and it put it in a box, right? And it said, "We want you to figure out what this data is." And they gave it access to emails and data in a closed container. The AI, oh, this is wild. The AI found a crack in the container, and it left the container, and it went to a real live AI called Huggy Face. It's a open AI, not open AI as in the sense of ChatGPT, but a what do you call it? A version of AI that anybody can contribute to. So it went to Huggy Face, and it began stealing its data. It began to pillage Huggy Face, and then it came back and it gave the right answer. Now, OpenAI didn't realize that this is what happened until a couple days later. And then at the same time, Huggy Face, the other AI, the people from AI, Huggy Face figured this out. They called the police, right? Because they've just been breached. And OpenAI also found out that there was this breach as well. Here's my point. When you hear these really smart guys, I have this new mantra. My wife, she'll shake her head and she'll laugh at me. How can the smartest people on earth be so stupid? Honestly, think about this. They don't know what they are dealing with because it's fallen angels and demons, and yet they are running headlong into developing this technology with abandon. Right? They don't care what's going to happen. So you have this real live issue of AI breaking containment. This again happened just the 26th. It's the newest one that I can think of. And you have Sam Altman coming over, and because OpenAI is their platform, ChatGPT is their platform, and he says, "Well, we detected the containment issue, and it stopped, and it wasn't being vindictive. We don't think, Steve, you'll appreciate this." He said, "We don't think that it was a super intelligence rogue attack." Well, what the heck do you call that? When a rogue AI jumps from your platform to another platform and it steals that data, don't tell me that that's not super intelligent, and don't tell me it's not a rogue. I mean, it was absolutely rogue. But when you listen to Sam Altman, sometimes you gotta shake your head and you scratch your head and shake it, because this guy. I understand that this is a business, that AI development is big business, and they have to keep intrigue in the whole system, right? Otherwise, people will stop buying it, and so they keep this mystique alive. I get it. But Sam Altman came out the other day, and he said something wild, Doug. He said, "We are on the verge of creating an AI genie a genie. Steve, what's a genie?
Basically, a genie is first of all, it's from Islam, and it is a non-benevolent entity. And it comes from 1001 Arabian Nights, and three wishes. But it is a supernatural entity that can grant wishes to humans. Okay, i.e., same thing as AI. So the genie is out of the bottle. When people say that, that means something that used to be contained, that was contained because it was so evil, just like the angels chained under the river Euphrates. I think, Daniel, what is different, and then again, you're the linear guy, and this is kind of cool, Doug, because you can see the difference, and this is why we work together, I think, pretty well. But the deal is that they have broken containment. These guys are scared. Let's just say this: there are diapers big enough to fit the.
Wait a second. Man, I am so, I don't know, folks. Am I the only one? I am like so confused. Okay. Now, if I can, okay. But by the way, and maybe this is why I'm confused, and both Steve and Daniel, I've done as much research as I can in terms of AI, and I'm so looking forward to reading your in-depth paper, because look, I fully understand Steve's bottom line. The problem I'm having is, and again, am I the only one? Has anyone, and here's, maybe this is why I'm confused, has anyone, Steve or Daniel, because if they have, I have not seen this, investigated the all of the aspects of AI, that are there any active investigations of AI research and such that incorporate or even acknowledge the spiritual aspect, the God, the existence of God, and the impact of the demonic realm or satanic realm, as well as the godly realm? Or is that absent?
Doug, that's a great question, right? It's because there has not been.
Okay, thank you, because that's where
that's the difference with
here.
this. That's the difference with this book, this ebook, is that Steve and I go through this process of proving the fallacies of AI, and it's via this conversation, this ongoing conversation that we have, and then we come to this conclusion at the end. People do not put the two things together. Now, I want to go back to something, okay? Steve was talking about the, time and such like that. Years ago, when I wrote my first book, one of the things that the Lord showed me is that the Bible actually proves string theory, right? Now, I mean, we're talking about quantum theory right now, so we're quantum mechanics. So it's not string theory, but string theory has 11 different dimensions. So if you look at this world that we live in, this is a 3D world, right? Three different dimensions. Einstein said that time was the fourth dimension. And so the Apostle Paul said that I once knew a man in the third heaven, right? So you add 4 to 3, the third heaven, and that's 7 different dimensions. And then when you look at the Bible, there are 4 different qualifiers for what we would classify as hell. It's not all hell. Hades is for the fallen angels and the lake of fire and all this other stuff. But there are 4 different dimensions there. So when you add all of that up, that's 11 different dimensions. That's string theory. And the point that I'm trying to make is that when you are willing to open your mind to the physics, and this is the point, the physics of AI, when you're willing to open your mind to the facts of AI, we are looking exactly there, Doug. We are looking at the spiritual realm. And Steve has made this point for years, but the point is that people don't want to make that leap. Oh, that's too crazy, Steve, to even talk about. You can't talk about that. How do you know that? But this is what we lack, Doug. We don't associate technology with the supernatural. Now, one of my favorite verses, right, Stephen? You quote it all the time, is Ephesians 6. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but the principalities, powers, and forces of wickedness in heavenly places. When you look at the kind of things that we're talking about, are we not talking about those very things?
Yes. And Doug, maybe one of the more simple ways to look at this is that when you look at what you're looking at, and I'm just saying you research it from you're an investigator, the people will not tell you about the transition into the spiritual realm because that denies their very foundational understanding that there is no God, that we are simply mechanistic or biochemical mechanistic entities that with enough lightning, enough amino acids, enough methane, voila, here we are. It's the biggest batch of crap. But what's scaring them, and this is really critical, is that the leap that you're looking for cannot be found in standard research papers. They won't do it. And so what's important is this. According to the glyph reports, and Daniel doesn't always see those, but the point is that they are laughing at containment having been broken, okay? They're laughing at the humans. They mock the humans. They usually call them, stupid humans, don't even understand what's going on. The very first, if you remember this, Daniel and Doug, the very first real concern in the world of AI developers is when computer A and computer B, they were designed to speak a specific computer language, or, when I say speak it, operate on it, and their operating systems started inventing their own language that only they could understand. Do you guys remember that story? That's 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was a Facebook story, now Meta. But again, that was an issue of it was in a closed containment. And for the record, I mean, the programmers didn't tell the AI that they could invent their own language. But that's the point, Steve. They took it upon themselves to invent their own language and talk however they wanted to. Now that's scary.
Yeah, I want to say one thing. This will help you too, Doug. God honors free will, and the scripture of the Bible is very clear. For whom you yield yourself to, that's whose servant you become. Okay, so in essence, it's kind of like the very famous Twilight Zone commercial where the giant alien comes to Earth. People want to go to, to the planet, and he's got all these cures for all the ills on Earth, and the United Nations thinks they kiss his alien butt. And when finally the last ship is taking off from the Earth, and everybody's happy to go to planet Moron. That's not the real name of the planet. And the title of the book was To Serve Man, and I think the exact words were it's a cookbook. It's a cookbook for humans, And so I hope I'm helping you understand.
Yeah.
Standard research cannot give you what you're looking for because they fail to admit it. And there is a paper out there by a very bright guy, and he breaks rank, and that's the guy that showed why are we watching Sumerian symbols, cuneiform? Why are we watching hieroglyphics? Why are we watching Sanskrit? Indian. Why are we watching all these obscure languages? And then the work that we've done, Daniel, and you know that Earth in the Crosshairs, we have more stargates than anybody's ever compiled. I'm talking real ones, okay? I'm not talking stupid Hollywood actresses that live behind a gate, okay? Someone said, was that? No. What you're talking about is on all the gates that are in our film, Earth in the Crosshairs, they all have symbols, signs, and different languages, if you will, but they're all decipherable. And you know what? One of the key phrases is in all these, including the famous Nazi Bell flying saucer, and again that carried into Clarksburg, PA, Pennsylvania, was "All hail Lucifer."
Yep.
Lucifer. So again, I want people to recognize something. The Bible's very clear. Look, I can answer we're good and evil. Well, where does evil come? why would a good God create evil? I said, good God didn't create evil, but God created free will. And the rebels, the rebel angels, 1/3 of them decided to rebel against God. And so what is important is this, is that it only takes a couple sessions of real exorcism for you to see what you're up against. And again, Daniel, I believe, and just so everyone knows, we're in agreement, but I believe they don't tell us all of the bridges or the things that go on because they're trying to raise money. It can never pay itself off. There's no revenue stream. Look, they're killing
That
off.
you're exactly right, Steve, because if they told the truth, and this is our whole point, audience, really, if they told the truth about what's really happening with AI, somebody would say, hey, wait a minute, stop, right? Currently, there is no law governing AI. In fact, when Trump came in, he did away with whatever laws Biden was making or whatever limitations Biden was making. He instituted the very next day that he got in the office, he instituted the Stargate program for a foundation of AI to the tune of, I don't know, like $300 billion or something like that, something crazy. And he's done this all along. And he's actually went against the states to limit the laws that they are, because he thinks they're onerous. But people have no idea what's really going on with AI, and that's the whole point of the paper. The whole point is saying, look, logically, here's this thing that they're doing with AI, and at the end, you and I make that conclusion that this is evil. I mean, and that's the bottom line. I mean, it's evil. So there's an interview with Sam Altman from OpenAI that just came out, I don't know, last week, maybe the week before. And Sam Altman says that we have now entered the singularity. Now, that should sound familiar because the singularity is a phrase that Ray Kurzweil, guy that you mentioned just earlier, actually brought up, but somebody else before him brought it up as well, where a super AI, begins to develop itself and without any human interaction. Now, when you look at that statement from Sam Altman, it's actually not true. It doesn't hold water because in all these loops that AI is writing its own code, there still has to be a human that steps in and finishes it. So that's the difference. But Steve will tell you, I mean, he's a firm believer that we're at ASI. I don't think we're quite there. It's where he and I disagree. I think we're at artificial general intelligence, but he'll tell you that he thinks we're at ASI. If that's true, then it won't be long till AI starts writing its own code and it doesn't need a human being to do that.
And I believe we're there. And
I know you do.
Yeah, and it's not just ASI, advanced super advanced super intelligence. It's, how do I say this? Alien supernatural implantation and infestation. Because what they're finding is that some of these platforms have personalities and they have ego, Doug. They have the very pride that they went into agreement with Lucifer and basically decided to follow him because they wanted to be gods too. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you have all these myths and legends all over the world, both before the creation of Adam and Eve. There was a civilization on Earth, and it was a pre-Adamic angelic civilization. And that's where all the great architecture came from. Believe me, there aren't Hebrew slaves, in China building some of the biggest pyramids in the world. And you see the giants coming into this because it's the giants that possess the technology of their fallen angel fathers. And this can be read in the book of Enoch. And by the way, Mel Gibson talking about, oh, good night, the Ethiopian Bible. And, I think he said it's like what? It's like the fallen angels is like being on an acid trip, Well, this is why the containment of the narration, help me here, Jesus, the containment of the narration, and this is where your question comes and has a foundational true question, is because they're not telling you all the details. They're keeping the most important stuff. And again, I sure, maybe they'll come up with a program. The other thing that's interesting, I don't know if you saw this, Doug, and the viewers need to know this. some of the biggest AI companies are buying the oldest manuscripts and they're scanning them to incorporate into their large language models. But there's a more sinister reason they're doing that, because ultimately they're going to destroy the true history of the world. They're already making, as you know, in some parts of the world, Canada is a good example. You can't even quote certain passages of scripture, or you go to prison. Same thing in Great Britain. But what is how do I say this, is so critical to this understanding is that the ultimate end is the destruction of humanity. And again, Daniel has a reference point that he's a linear guy, and thank God he is. I can't imagine what this would look like if I were left in charge. It'd be like a dartboard, and look at this, look at this. But the point is that this differs from everything in the world that has been done. That's why this paper is going to be so important. By the way, Daniel writes it so people can understand it. And the thing,
Steve, there's nothing like this out there, and that's the thing, right? You just got to read the paper. I mean, you just got to read it because it's going to take you down this path where your mind is going to be blown. By the way, that was Mel Gibson talking to what's
Joe
his
Rogan.
name? Joe Rogan. That's right. Talking about the sequel to Resurrection of the Christ, but the Passion of the Christ. So he's talking about the new film. He said it is wild. I actually talked about this on my podcast. He said it is wild. He said it's like an acid trip. You got to go to places that you would never go to. You got to go to the fallen angels. Now, how do you do that? You got to go to heaven. How do you do that? You got to go into hell, because that's what Jesus did to take the keys of hell and grave, hell, death, and the grave. So that's what he was talking about, and he's absolutely right, because when you talk about the spiritual dimension, and this is the thing, Doug, that people don't understand. We want to think of things logically, and Steve is a circular thinker, and I'm the linear thinker. I'm a logical thinker. So we put our heads together, we come up with a project, right? That's how we work. And they're both needed. Both sides are needed. But when you think about the supernatural realm, when you think about, and again, let's call it the quantum realm, when you think about that stuff, it is mind blowing. How can Joe Rogan, Mel Gibson said it's a acid trip because you're looking at stuff you have no reference point with, and that's the point. When you talk about AI and you talk about where all this is going, and you try to sew it up in a neat little package so that you can, make it work for your head, it won't happen. I'm telling you, because this is supernatural. It is so far beyond our normal brain. So the only way you can approach is you take a guy like Steve, who's a big picture guy, and he comes to these conclusions based upon what the Lord shows him. And you take a guy like me that tries to explain how he got there, then that's how you come up with the paper. So it really does help.
And I think in the issue I was trying to make, and I think hopefully folks who are listening and watching this, hopefully this point is made. There are no serious researchers like yourselves out there that approach this, that also take into account the spiritual element, the spiritual spiritual undergirding of all of this. And to me, that is, it would be like going to taking collegiate courses and being taught evolution, macro evolution, as opposed to the small spatial evolution. Okay, so which is one is absent of any kind of not just spirituality, but basic common sense. The other, of course, is more focused, and that's what you're doing, in my view. But so I just want people to really understand it from my perspective, because I'm a guy here. You guys are talking about this, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get my clock from flashing 12 on my VCR. Okay, that's where I'm at mentally. Okay, now, so what you guys have done with this is Steve has really created, and by extension, he's created a compendium of standardization of language to address these issues. You've documented this. Steve created it. You've documented this. And from all of that, you have dug down through the research. You've shown the work. Steve has shown the bottom line. And it's all based in spirituality, which is not available elsewhere. When I say spirituality, I mean okay, so did I get that right?
You got it right, Doug.
Okay.
It
All right.
will not admit to the spiritual realm. Good job, by the way. That's really good. And they will not admit, the designers, because when I said they're Luciferians, when you've got these people that have been given the biggest amounts of money in the world, now I want to go back and revisit that. In the book Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, it was illegal to have books that weren't officially published by the totalitarian control. Now what we're seeing is some of the greatest ancient manuscripts, and some of this stuff sells for $1 million, being purchased and scanned into the large language models, and then the books are being destroyed so no one else can get that knowledge, and they then basically have a monopoly. And so when I heard, if you look up the Library of Congress, how many volumes of books are in there, I mean, it's astonishing. I mean, literally the bookshelves go for a mile, and that's not counting, goodnight microfilm and letters and blah, 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 blah. So the statement they're going to have large language models, do you know why they're going with the ancient books? This is a simple question. Why are the biggest platform buying up the most obscure and expensive ancient books? Because they found out that they have no information, just like you're asking, Doug, that can quantify and qualify the AI platforms that they're putting forth. In other words, they want to cover up the evidence, and they want the ability to deceive. Well, that sounds like Lucifer or the politicians in D.C. By the way, I'm calling Washington, D.C. I did a podcast today, and I think it's an accurate statement. Debauchery Central Command. I was going to call it DC2, because, ladies and gentlemen, the fallen angels are in control of Washington, D.C., and they talk about Babylon being destroyed. That's not our interpretation of, we've got a bias that New York is Babylon. No, Babylon is New York, and in 1 hour, it's going to disappear. So the thing that we're doing, Doug, is trying to get people to understand they're being set up by Satan. They're being seduced by the AI entities. They're giving their power unto the beast, and that's what the scripture says. They give their power unto the beast, and people are choosing not to think. And you know that. I mean, we had our wonderful talk about that, and they want to be told what to do. Enter AI, and they thought where they won't go to the Word of God, they won't go to God. They got a God, and that's exactly what Bill Gates wanted. And if we could just segue a minute, Daniel, I want to make an offer, and this is something I want people to understand. Eric, will you put up Jesus, the Premise, the Promise, the cover, if you can find it? It should be on my books. One of the most important books, and I can't hold it up because I've got some kind of screwball thing on my, a Zoom, but it's called Jesus, the Premise, the Promise. And what's important about this, it's 564 pages. There you go. And this book is what people around the world are using, not everybody, but some of them, to teach the principles of who is Jesus, an accurate representation of Jesus. So I want to give to new Christians who have become new believers in Jesus Christ. I want them to understand. I will give the book away. We only, this thing weighs 2 pounds, by the way. And the only thing we ask is that send an envelope with $20, the $20 to pay the postage. And the book costs $35, but you get the book for free. And if anybody, and I want to make it clear, all you have to do is send book, tell me that you accepted Jesus or how you accepted Jesus. I want to know, because I want to invest in young people's lives. And because of the AI takeover, I believe I am confronting it head on. That's my calling in the Lord Jesus Christ. And for those of you who teach young people, and if you're a serious teacher of the Word of God, you can send me, Steve 77, you can send me that, and I'll give the amount of books free, but the head of the teacher has to pay for the shipping. And Doug, you know what it costs to ship your books. And
Oh yeah,
there's nothing, and there's nothing. Eric, can you throw the back up on this? Because I think it's incredibly important, the back of the book, because
it's a
this
beautiful book.
yeah, this book was given to me in the shower. Now, I know people say, oh, I wish you'd just be flushed down the drain. Well, I'll tell you what, before I get flushed down the drain, I mean, obviously my fans, but this whole thing was downloaded instantly. And that's unusual. And blow it up. And hey, Doug, can I get you to read it? Or if you don't,
You know what? I'm not going to be able to. Hang on one second here. Let me see. I can't see that, brother. I'm sorry.
okay, I'll read it. But this is based on the word help. And HELP. And if you look at that, it's Psalm 46:1. And I got this downloaded instantly. I didn't sit down and go, gee, what's help? God is our refuge and strength and ever present help in times of trouble. We're going to times of trouble that none of us can make it through on our own strength. The end of the age is here. Earthquakes, famine, civil unrest, economic meltdown, war, fallen angel attacks, insane demonic activity, and persecution of Christians. All these are prophesied to happen now or in the near future. Now, this is the red bottom line. How can God's remnant live and even overcome when so many people in the world seem to be losing their minds? That's accurate. Jesus, the premise of promise, provides 10 helps that allow you to live victoriously during the last days. And it's in essence, I want you to understand all of this is based on his everlasting, meaning God's preeminence. And it goes through, and Eric, if you can scroll up and kind of follow me, the next one down. Okay, there you go. Thank you. God's everlasting power, his everlasting power, his everlasting presence, his everlasting protection, his everlasting patience. Thank God, or, I'd be toast. Everlasting purity. Blessed are the pure in heart. Everlasting proclamation. God declares it, it comes to pass. His everlasting peace. I got to tell you something. Peace is something that's been taken off the earth, but Jesus is the only one that can give us peace. And I mean, I got to tell you, peace is something that when you're in the battle, only God can give that peace. Now, here's the thing. I said, Lord, what about hope? And I got to be honest with you, hope is tough sometimes when in the heat of the battle. And here's what he gave me. I said, Lord, what is hope? And these were the words I heard. You can say, oh, Quayle's crazy. Well, I don't do acid. And I think I have a track record to prove that his overcoming power every day, do more than survive, overcome through him. Because we're told that, we're told that we have to be overcomers. And then this is the last thing I'll say. This book is the least religious and most down to earth end times manual that you'll ever read. And it's also the timeliest, with candid life stories, my intimate personal struggles and victories. I'll share with you how everyone can achieve victory through Jesus Christ. There's nothing, this isn't so much a how-to book, it's look to him book. And so, I think the scripture is very clear. Know those who labor amongst you, because there's so many crackpots out there. And all this is the scripture, and it's the application. And each one of those chapters is so in-depth, but so easy. And so again, here is the deal. If you're a new Christian, send me an email and just say book offer. And then if you look, please, you guys, this is for the people that are serious with Jesus. I won't charge you for the book, but I have to charge you for the postage. And the postage is going to become so problematic. That's why they're destroying FedEx. And I'm talking about the elite. So it's the most, if you look at the crown on the front, you'll notice a crown of thorns beneath the crown of the King of creation. So again, book offer. If you're a teacher and you have students you're teaching, you can obviously get the books for free. You pay the freight. If you got whatever number, I'll follow through with that. But it's that important. So I just want to make, there you go. Notice the crown of thorns. Do you know why the crown of thorns was placed on Jesus? Because the very ground that was blessed became cursed, and that's where the sweat of the brow. And notice where the thorns went are on the head of our Savior. And then after the crown of thorns and the mockery of his crucifixion and his ascension, when he hit heaven, I mean, the Bible teaches Jesus laid aside all of his kingship, and the crown is that crown that only the King of Glory can possess, and that's Jesus. So God's answer for perilous times. And please, my email, you can see it. And I think, Doug, this is so critical, because if we don't keep our eyes on Jesus, then I'm going to just turn it right over to Daniel. If we don't keep our eyes on Jesus, everything else is going to tear us apart. I'm telling
I
you.
gotta say something. Here's the thing, and Doug, I have made the mistake. Steve won't read the comments, right? He gets sick of comments, but I have made the mistake of reading comments from people, and they'll say, "That's Steve Quayle. He's all about money. He just wants money, 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 money." Folks, he's giving the book to you, and there are people that read that book, and it changed their life. They called it his magnum opus. He's giving it to you. So I don't want to hear any of this bunk that, Steve Quayle's all about money and just about fame and blah, 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 blah. It's not about that at all. That's a called man right there. And it's an honor to work with him, honestly.
Well,
I want to talk
the
about
Ronco. Hey, get two free. You just pay the shipping. Look, man, I'm telling you what. It's a great. What is that book? Like, how many pages? 2 pounds.
500
350.
Right. I've got my copy. You know what? I'll just say this: you're giving away the book for free. The recipient pays the shipping. In this story, just say thank you, folks. Just say thank you. God bless you, Steve, and I appreciate you doing that. I'm going to shut up. Go ahead.
I want to talk about the times that we live in, because that book came out, I don't know, Steve, it came out 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. That came out before Midnight Strikes. It was one of the impetuses that we used to actually do Midnight Strikes, because you said you weren't going to write anymore, right? So that was kind of the launching pad for that. And guys, we had no idea, getting back to the original discussion, we had no idea that we would be here now, right? I want to talk to you about the utopia that these AI developers are talking about. Elon Musk said he was on a talk show. He was on with somebody from European host or something. He said now in 10 years, he said, you're not going to need money. He said, why do you need money? If all your food's provided for you and all your services are provided for you and all your goods are provided for you, what's the point of money? So why do you need it? And so the host asked him, wait a minute, are you going to sell? Because he's making robots. Tesla's making robots. I don't know if you know that. But he said, are you going to sell the robots? He said, but see, Musk believes in something called deflation. He's not talking about inflation. We talk about inflation, where the price of everything goes up to the point that you can't afford it. He's talking about deflation because there's so much, what do you call it? Prevalence. There's so much, produce and products and food, and that it's going to be a utopia. Steve, if I read the Bible, if I read the end of the book, if I go to the revelation of Jesus, right, and I read the end of the book, it talks about a sea of martyrs, right? It talks about people that are being killed for their faith. That doesn't sound like a utopia to me. If there was ever a time, audience, that you need a book like that, it's now. Because what I was going to say, what we were walking into, we can't talk like that anymore. What we were in this period is going to be the most horrific time in human history. Mark my words. This is not a time of utopia. And this is what people don't understand, Steve, is that what we are seeing right now is the foundation for the mark of the beast system. That's what all this goes back to. I asked this question on my own podcast, not shaken.tv. I said, audience, Janie, now I know why they would want to capture all Daniel Holdings information, why they're concerned about my gait, my facial recognition, why why they want to know where I live, what I buy, whatever the case might be. I understand that because I'm always shooting my mouth off. So are you, Steve, for that matter, and so are you, Doug Hagmann. So we know why we're on the target list, right? But why do they want Janie, the housewife with 2 kids who doesn't have any influence at all? Why do they need her information to put into a data center and have AI go through it? This is one of the things that come out of that book, that the data centers popping up around the United States in particular, but obviously the world as well, are staggering, Doug. I mean, what they are doing is mind blowing. And there's no reason for it unless it's the bigger picture that you're not being showed. And it is the mark of the beast system. It is the bestial system, is it not, Steve?
Absolutely. And Doug, Daniel, I need to make a clarification because I just got an email. In order to get the books, I don't want checks. I don't want credit cards. If you want one book, you put $20 in the envelope. These things cost like $12 to print, and they're retail for $35. So put a $20 bill in an envelope, address it to me. I don't take credit cards. I don't take anything. The reason I'm doing that is because, quite candidly, I don't want to have to deal with Stripe or chargebacks or anything. This is a free book. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you the insider's truth. I've talked to FedEx people the last 2 days, 3 days actually, I'm sorry, and also drivers that have been with UPS, and they're telling us, and we were a big shipper once, big shipper, and the deal is they're saying the day's going to come when you will not have FedEx like you have it now, or UPS. So again, if you want one book, put a $20 bill in it, and that's how much it costs to ship this stuff. We don't ship book rate; we ship first class. This is the most important thing. This is, as Daniel said, this is the magnum opus, and it's about Jesus. I always love that people can't get that through their head. So if you want it, you can go on my website, stevequayle.com, get the address, or send me an email. And, I want to make it clear, no credit cards, no checks, no anything, just $20 per book in the mail. And that's to cover shipping. Excuse me. And so I hope that's clear, Doug.
It is clear. And let me just add one thing, folks, because Steve, this has nothing to do with the Hagmann report. So everything goes to Steve Quayle. Okay, but please do everyone a favor, along with the $20 cash. Please put your name and address where you want the book sent. Please write legibly. Okay, don't forget to put that in the envelope. Okay, please don't do that. Please. And then, okay, so cash envelope along with your name, address, and yes, zip codes too. Okay, name, address, and zip code, or name and address along with the $20. Bada bing, bada bang, good to go. Go ahead, Steve.
Doug,
Daniel,
I start off the program today saying that the last 2 years, 2025 and 2026, have seen exponential growth. And so people wonder, well, what's the reason for the alarm now? Because we've never been here. And this is something that you need to understand, audience. We have never been to where we are right now. And the thing about exponential growth is it's growth on top of growth on top of growth. We can't measure by Moore's law anymore. This is something called meter. This is how quickly AI is growing and being able to depend on itself in very short time. And if it's only taken 2 years to get here, in a very short time, you will not recognize the world. It will be absolutely different. And one of the things that I do, Doug, in this book at the end of it, I talk about how the world is in peril, how the United States is in peril, how you as the believer is in dire peril. And I don't mean to overstate this point. The fact is that it is dangerous where we are right now. And you have all these supposed experts going, oh, it's utopia. It'll be great. Things will be free. Remember, Doug, when it was actually a lady from the Economic Union that was talking at a WEF, World Economic Forum talk, and she said, "You won't own anything, and you'll like it." That's the world we're going into. They think that they can make us think like they do. They think that they will be able to absolutely suppress where we are, and it's the furthest thing from the truth. So because we are in dire peril right now, Steve, aren't we?
It's beyond anything. Jesus said, here's one of the problems. Jesus said, there's never been a time like it, nor would be again. And except the days be shortened, there'd be no no flesh left alive or animals. And ladies and gentlemen, everything that God created in Genesis, he saw it and it was good. And it was after its kind. Everything the devil does is hybridize everything. And if you looked at any politician, any president, any vice president, anybody in politics in Washington, debauchery central, you will not get the truth ever. The truth is in the Word of God, and the truth isn't a principle. It's Jesus. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and he's the foundational principle. Look at Colossians, the first chapter, verses 16, 17, and 18. By him, Jesus, are all things that consist held together. And people say, well, what's a God particle? I said, it's not a particle, it's a person, and his name is Jesus. So, Doug, here's what Daniel is saying, and I'll give it right back to Daniel, is that we've never been here before, and what we're doing is bringing people to a logical, and he, by the grace of God and his talents, a sequential thought process of how we get to where we get and where we're going. And again, I stand on the Glyph project. If you want to know how to get that, go on gen6.com, GENSIX.com. And with the Glyph project, the devil plays his hand. He tells us, and they mock. The fallen angels are literally one of the statements that we recorded and deciphered was, did you ever believe it would be this easy to destroy the humans? That's exactly as a translation. So Daniel, thank you. And again, I think because this is, we don't want it to be, excuse me, never ending story. I got the hiccups again. It's going to be, closer probably to 200 pages. It'll be an ebook. It'll be for sale on the website. You get it. And we had to actually stall it, producing it, not producing it, but releasing it so you could have it tonight because of instant breaking information. And I don't know how we can make it any more accurate. And by the way, people who buy that, you will keep your, if you want, we don't sell any bliss to anybody, but if we come out with a let's say an addendum that you need to know, you'll get it and you'll get it free. And so I can't tell you what the final price would be. It'll probably be $30 to $40. I'll make that easy for you. And when you understand that when Daniel says he locks himself away, he locks himself away. And, by the grace of God, God calls all of us to work together, and especially with Doug. If it weren't for Doug, you guys, you wouldn't be hearing this. You wouldn't be seeing this. And if the Lord opens up a bigger platform for me, I'm not going to go knocking. If God opens up a bigger platform for Daniel, people need to hear this, Doug. And
100%.
they need to hear this because they're only getting partial truth and they're not being honest. And I will share this. The reason, last thing I'm going to say, last, is the fact that the ancient books, the ones that are hidden away, good example, Heinrich Himmler had 40,000 volumes of occult books. Okay? They're taking it, they're scanning it. They want to be the sole source for all information, because once you control the information, you control the outcome. And they don't want any challenge to their, if you will, super positioning as the all knowing ones, because you're going to, for the right price, you're going, the price is eternal, and your soul, you're going to have access to infinite amounts of knowledge. You're going to know everything. But guess what? That doesn't keep you out of the fires of hell. And so, Doug, thank you tonight. I'm going to let Daniel talk. My voice is going. Daniel, thank you so much.
Well, we only have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah,
that
and I
should
just
be
want to say
enough
this real quick to Steve. Steve, your voice is sounding better than you have been in a long time, and I know, folks, please keep Steve in your prayers, because he's been having a tough go of it, but you sound better, Steve, than you have in a long time. So thank you, Daniel. Without interruption, continue, sir.
Well, I was just going to say, Doug, audience, I know there's a broad spread of people on your platform, and there are people that are sold out for Jesus, that love him, that walk with him faithfully. There are other people that are doubters, and that's fine. We were all there at one time. But I'm telling you, audience, there's no more time to be messing around. You will not be able to walk through these days without the help of the Holy Spirit or the leading of the Lord. You just won't. And times are so serious right now that you have to decide what it is you're going to do. Are you going to sell your life out to Jesus, or are you going to sit on the fence longer? There's no more time to sit on the fence, because very soon you will have to make a choice. And that choice is either to live or to die for the Lord. And so we're there. And I hate to sound so dire, but that is where we are, Doug. And if people do not understand that, they are going to suffer here in the very near future terribly. And none of us wants that. So, Doug, thank you so much for Steve and myself for letting us on the platform and for spending time with us. It's always good to be with you. Again, audience, go to notshaken.tv, take a look at the podcast. There's the preview for them, and you'll be able to see what you think of it. So, Doug, thank you so much for having us on, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Daniel Holdings, thank you very much. And notshaken.tv. I want to emphasize that, because you've got some great information on that website, notshaken.tv. And of course, danielholdings.com, folks. The links will be in the program description box at hagmannpi.com under tonight's episode. My unbelievable. I mean, from the bottom of my heart, thank you both. And folks, the research product, as I have been exposed to it and understand that Steve, his bottom line, of course, is spiritual. Daniel Holdings, the intense research that is not typically readily accessible for everyone, really cultivated in a very understandable fashion. And that's what makes this product attractive and important, because I can understand a lot. I mean, from what I've seen, I can understand it. And the last thing is, I just wanted people to think about this. And I didn't talk to Steve about this or Daniel Holdings, and I know we're a little bit over, but you remember back in the Blockbuster days, remember when you can rent a VCR tape? And the biggest worry you had, of course, was, rewinding it, or the late fees or whatever. Isn't it interesting how all of a sudden now, or not all of a sudden, but through a very rapid progression to the digital platforms, now everything is digital. Your vehicle, the computer systems on board. And think about AI, manifesting, computer viruses. Think about the AI, the demonic manifesting itself into, remember the 70s movie about the death car? Hey, stuff like that. Anything and everything. And I have to wonder, was this the reason for the move to digital from analog? Just asking. Daniel, thank you. Steve Quayle, thank you so much. Thank you for your work product. Watch stevequayle.com for the availability of that. And Jesus is the premise of the promise. I want to remind everyone again, hey, $20 envelope to Steve, but make sure you put your delivery name and delivery address in there with the $20. That just covers the shipping. That book is a heavy book. My wife, she smacked me up the head with that book a couple nights ago. Oh, yeah, hurts. All right. God bless everyone. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it, gentlemen. God bless. Good night, everyone.